What's at the Walt Disney Family Museum and is it worth going to? Let's take a quick tour and I'll give you all the information you need to know. Where is it? What does it cost? And what are the highlights that you need to see? The Walt Disney Family Museum is located in the Presidio in San Francisco. We took a Waymo to get there, and I highly recommend this method of transportation if you're just visiting San Francisco, because driving and parking in San Francisco can be a bit tricky and can be expensive. If you don't want to take a Waymo because you don't trust the technology or you don't want to pay for it, you can also do a taxi or an Uber or anything like that. When you walk in, you'll be greeted and asked for your ticket, but don't worry, you can also buy a ticket in person, and that's what we did. So here's the breakdown for how much the tickets cost. Adults are $25, seniors over 65 are $20, students with an ID are $20, so don't forget to bring it. Youth from the ages of 6 to 15 are $15, and children who are 5 years old or under are free, as are members of the United States military. Now let's talk about some of the museum highlights. So the museum is arranged in chronological order of Walt Disney's life. It starts out with his ancestors, his great-grandfather and great-grandmother, and then goes on to his parents, himself, and his siblings. Next, we see Walt Disney's World War I service. He was actually only 16 at the time of World War I, so he was too young to join the military, but he did serve as a Red Cross delivery driver. After World War I, Walt started in animation. He had always been interested in film and animation, but at this point he started making his short cartoons, which included things like Oswald the Rabbit and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which were animated drawings that included a live-action star as well, who in this case was the little girl Alice. This is also where we get to see Mickey Mouse, and there's even memorabilia with Mickey Mouse, including the iconic Mickey Mouse watch. And now there's even a watch face for the Apple Watch with Mickey Mouse, and I had to show it off with the original Mickey Mouse watch. Walt Disney went from doing short cartoons to full feature-length cartoons. At the time, this was super controversial because nobody thought that anyone would be interested in that or that it could even really be done. So the first animated feature-length film was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and we all know how that went. It was a huge sensation, immensely popular, and made Walt Disney's Animation Studio a ton of money. And we won't talk about the live-action remake because everyone has their own opinions about that, and we don't need to bring in that negativity. Speaking of Snow White, there were also lots of brand new, done for the first time techniques, including studying the actors as they portrayed the scenes and practicing doing things. And the animators have snippets of information saying how Walt let them do a ton of practice and a ton of research before they even tried to animate an inch of film. I thought that was really interesting because I don't feel like Disney is really working that way anymore. But this isn't really a commentary on the Walt Disney Company, but just a review of the museum, so let's move on. Other feature-length movies included things like Pinocchio and Peter Pan, and you get to see lots of these movies represented in the museum. Then, of course, World War II hit. At this point, Walt was too old for military service, but he did help by making posters and cartoons, things that would help the public, like what to do in the event of an air raid, and things like that. And of course, also cartoons promoting things that would help the economy or help people to make choices that would help support the war effort. Then you get to see Walt's collections and personal items, and my favorite thing in this section was his collection of miniatures. He had miniature spoons, anything you'd find in like a dollhouse or a fairy garden. He had all of it. And my favorite thing was the miniature books, because I too really enjoy things in miniature, and miniature books are just a personal favorite. So it was interesting to see that Walt Disney and I had that in common. Walt also very famously loved trains, and there are lots of trains and train-related things on display in the museum. This has all been super interesting, and up to this point I would have said it was absolutely worth my $25. But then we get to see the best part. As you are coming around a blind curve, you get to see a full layout of a scale model of Disneyland as Walt Disney envisioned it originally. And it's so cool. I can't even describe how amazing this is. It looks so much like how Disneyland looks now, even though it was different at the time that Walt came up with it, and he didn't end up putting everything that he had thought of into the park. And even though there have been many changes since the original Disneyland, it was just amazing to see. And I really enjoyed getting to point out the different rides and attractions and lands, because I just really enjoy seeing how close it was to what we even have now. After this, you get to go through some of the ideas and rides and how Disney made his idea into a reality. You get to see things like animatronics. There's even an animatronic bird that you kind of get to puppet. You can move its head up and down, flap its wings, open its beak. It's very fun, and it gives you an idea of what animatronics were like and even how they still function today. After this, there's more about Disney World and more of Walt's vision, but then of course it moves into Walt Disney's final years. Disney was iconic and People loved him. He had such a lasting impact on everyone. So, of course, there's lots of condolences and sympathy expressed from people who knew him or people whose lives he touched. And that's very touching as well. And then, of course, you come to the gift shop. It's a pretty standard museum gift shop. It has things relating to Disneyland, Disney World, Walt Disney, and the museum itself. So there's lots to check out there. So at this point, the question is it worth the money? And I personally think it definitely is, but make sure if you're a student that you bring your student ID so you can get that discount. If you've been to the museum or are thinking about going, feel free to leave me a comment. And if you found this interesting or helpful, please consider subscribing, and thanks for watching.